Hello everybody. I want to kick off this week by saying thanks very much for the feedback that I got to the last episode. I really appreciate it. I've replied to as many of the comments as I've seen, but if I've missed one, I will get to it. And again, thanks very much indeed. It really makes my day to read your comments. Most of us know Socrates. No, not the Brazilian footballer. The bearded ancient Greek bloke, the first cancel culture victim, forced, persuaded or obliged to drink hemlock when imprisoned, sentenced to death for corrupting the youth. The classicists amongst you will know the play The Phaedo. It's Plato's play, set immediately prior to Socrates' death, which seemed to be a failed attempt to convince us about the existence of the soul after death. Hold on, I'm not going to bore you to death with a philosophy lecture, but sorry, philosophy, morals, ethics comes into this. Get out the cold, wet towels. I got interested in Socrates for a different reason. He was a soldier, and his exploits are some of the best insights we have to warfare in ancient Greece, literally from the front line. But it's Socrates' personal conduct during the Peloponnesian War that's remarkable. He was known and oddly ridiculed for his ability to endure cold, hunger, and the rigours of close-quarter combat, something that few modern soldiers will ever experience. The one word used about Socrates in both his military life and his civilian defence of his philosophy is endurance, perseverance. And this characteristic has stuck with me. And so I bought one of the books that I want to discuss today. This is Socrates' Cafe, A Fresh Taste of Philosophy by Christopher Phillips. I bought it in 2005, writing on the cover page, yes, I regret to say I do write on books, quote, I bought this book when my life and business were in crisis. I admire Socrates' courage and intellectual integrity, and Mr. Phillips' balls at suggesting what he does here, unquote. In the mid-1990s, Christopher Phillips travelled around America, holding what he called impromptu Socratic dialogues with anyone he met in cafes or any other public venues. Anyone could join, and the group chose the subject, or it was announced shortly before by the person holding the meeting. The Socrates Cafe concept of good discussion about important topics by common people has been praised and, needless to say, criticised. I like the idea, but holding one in Thailand would be challenging, not least because of the language, which I don't speak. In any case, I'm sure I don't have the personality that would thrive in such an environment. Buy the book and look at the website. It says, quote, Christopher reminds us that we ought to ask questions, not about any chance question, as Socrates put it in Plato's Republic, but about the way one should live. He encourages us to roll up our sleeves, our mental sleeves, turn on our childlike questioning lenses, and become our own best thinkers, askers, and doers, unquote. Ironically, of course, Socrates himself was sceptical about the Athenian notion of democracy. He thought the opinions of the uneducated masses would lead to poor administrative and governance decisions. think MAGA deplorables. Yet paradoxically, he encouraged critical thinking and engaged in open dialogue with others. He believed that free speech would lead to knowledge, truth, and eventually wisdom. Socrates' insistence on speaking his mind got him terminally cancelled. So what's clear as mud is that ideas about free speech, and that includes written text, are far from simple. That brings me to the second book I want to talk about today, The Open Society and Its Enemies by Sir Karl Popper. It was published in 1945. Popper advocates a free and open society as a safeguard against totalitarianism. He emphasizes the importance of freedom of expression and rational debate, and he rejects ideologies that suppress dissent. There's a solid philosophical basis for this argument. I'll come to defending the open society in a moment. More up to date, I'll struggle with the pronunciation of this chap's name, Jacob Gandamak, a Danish human rights advocate, looks at the ideals of free speech in his new book, Free Speech, A History of Socrates to Social Media. He presents a timeline of free speech debate up to the modern era. The book summarizes a much longer podcast entitled Clear and Present Danger, in which Gandamak asks, quote, "Why have kings, emperors and governments killed and imprisoned people to shut them up? And why have countless people risked death and imprisonment to express their beliefs?" Unquote. I'm not going to attempt to summarize his various answers here. If you find the book a bit of a mouthful, there's some good reviews and I'll put them in the description below. However, I completely support his overall contention that, quote again, "the current strong control of internet speech on major social media platforms is misguided and makes things worse," end quote. And finally, an announcement. I joined the Free Speech Union. They say, quote, "It has become increasingly clear to us that freedom of expression is under severe pressure within the literary world, with publishers and literary agents often failing to defend their authors when their speech rights come under attack," end quote. The Free Speech Union has agreed that I can share their introductory video by Toby Young, their founder, and I'll do that next week. Have you had an issue with free speech, especially in your writing and publishing? If you have, let me know, and if it's really egregious, I can take it up with the Free Speech Union. Please do let me know. That's it for today. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time. If you like this episode, give it a like, thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.